Hello, my name is Keith, aka LoLByTheNumbers, and welcome to another 2014 League of Legends World Championship video analysis. Once again, this is a video analysis, not a shoutcast, so I expect that you've watched the match, know the outcome, or don't care, as there will be plenty of spoilers throughout it. I'll be looking primarily at macro level strategy, talking a lot about team compositions, their win conditions, and how teams do, don't, and should be pulling off these win conditions inside of the game. I'll also be taking a look at objective control, map rotations, as well as individual matchups, item choices, and individual play when it's apparent that these choices and plays are paramount to the win or loss of a team. This match we have OMG against LMQ. This is going to be their second match in the group stage of Worlds. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into picks and bans. On OMG's side, we see Twitch, Jarvan, Rumble. These are very, very targeted bans. These are the linchpin champions of the last match that they played of LMQ, and completely deny them the strategy they used against OMG last time. On LMQ's side, we see Zillion Rise, Alistar banned. Very generic bans for purple side. Potentially, LMQ could have left up Rise, then they would have been able to get the Rise versus Maokai matchup. Perhaps better would have been for them to ban Alistar, or even leave up Alistar at this point and get the Maokai versus Alistar matchup, which is fairly even. The other option would have been to switch bans, have Rise and Alistar ban Alistar second. This would let LMQ know that last ban of Rumble is coming, and then they could have banned Maokai instead of Alistar, or left open Rise or banned Maokai, whatever one. They could have gotten this even trifecta and not ended up picking this Lulu. So we do see OMG first picking Maokai, the one of three of the trifecta left. On LMQ's side, we see them picking up Thresh and Lee Sin, two very solid picks. Works fairly well in the composition that they have going at the moment. Also, they're not weak in any situation, really. On OMG's side, we see Kha'Zix's Lucian being picked up. This also doesn't give too much away from OMG's strategy, though it does let LMQ know that they are going for a bit more mid-game power with this Lucian. On LMQ's side, we see Lulu and Kog'Maw come into play. This is a situation that really starts to tell us what LMQ's strategy is going to be. It really hints towards a Death Ball Protect the ADC composition, or a composition that's going to use Yasuo, considering we have a knockup in every lane already. On OMG's side, we see Janna and Orianna filling out the composition. This really solidifies OMG as a fight team, a 5v5 team brawl. They're very much a death ball. They want to all run together. They have double shields. They have the protection aura of Maokai. They have the ball delivery system with Orianna, with the cleanup of resets of Kha'Zix. This team is meant to 5v5 as well as just be very strong in lanes. It's an extremely solid composition from OMG. This is almost like one of your dream compositions, where it does everything pretty well while being a sort of solid wall in team fights. On LMQ's side, we see the final pickup of Xerath. I looked through my notes, and apparently I said I really disliked this pick in this matchup. And looking back at it, I don't think that's necessarily true. Xerath works decently well against OMG's team. It allows LMQ to get some decent poke off. It has some okay AoE. And it's going to be fairly safe overall. I will revert my note statement and say I do somewhat like the Xerath pick. It works. It turns LMQ from the sort of Death Ball Protect the ADC shield comp into a potential siege poke comp, with Lee Sin and Thresh being okay in the poke comps, but not ideal. However, they were the first picks, so LMQ has sort of moved into a composition to fight OMGs. Having said that, I would have really preferred to have seen Ziggs being picked up by LMQ. Ziggs provides better disengage, something that LMQ's team is really lacking. He provides great AoE and great zoning ability, something they really needed to have against this OMG team. The AoE would have been really amazing when OMG all dive in, with the Maokai Orianna, the Lucian being short range. Ziggs' AoE is great against these sort of deathball protection comps. If LMQ were to get the lead, be able to get the lead, then LMQ have a great ability in Ziggs for poke, as well as for the AoE, since OMG are going to want to stay more together when they're on the defensive, whereas when they're on the offensive, they're going to be a little bit more split up. So potentially that's why I wrote I didn't like Xerath. I disagree with that now. I still would have preferred a Ziggs. The other option LMQ could have had is Yasuo. I'll talk about that in a second. Really look at these movements by LMQ. LMQ were looking for the 2v1 or the 2v2, I believe, whichever plan. They really set their plan in motion very well in this fight. They saw with their wards that LMQ were going, or that OMG were going for the triple buff start, and they made a great plan of stopping this. Rather than heading towards Kha'Zix's red buff and stopping him there, getting your normal start, OMG decide to go match the 2v2 up top, as well as getting very sneakily into this bush, getting the blue buff. Now we're going to see great bait. This should be a little bit worrisome from OMG, but I think it's extremely surprising. The way Kog'Maw turns into this sapling is very important for the surprise, but it also should be a little tiny red flag for OMG. Why would Kog'Maw back up into a sapling instead of keep running? However, that really only gives OMG like a third of a second reaction time. And we do see LMQ coming out with a great play at the start. Not only does this get them first blood, it stops Lucian from being able to bully Kog'Maw at the level 1. It really makes LMQ's duo lane the stronger one, as well as preventing the 3 buff start with Ackerman teleporting to the bot lane and immediately checking blue. This is really, really strong, very great play by OMG in the start. One thing I would have probably done on Lee Sin after taking this Wraith is, instead of going to taking this White, instead of going to Wolves, go up to Golems and race, and then move back towards the bot side jungle. Particularly because in this scenario, OMG want to dive Lulu. Not necessarily on this wave, but since OMG can no longer freeze, since they're dealing with a freeze on the top lane, the proper response is to dive the solo laner to prevent them from getting all this EXP. And right now, LMQ have simply done a great movements in the start, getting way more EXP onto their teams. Like right now, they're running a triple lane, whereas OMG only have 2 lanes and 2 in the jungle. Having seen both Janna leave top to go bottom, and now knowing that Maokai is completely missing, this should be a huge red flag for LMQ, and Lee Sin should start moving towards the bottom lane, making sure he's ready for the dive. Instead, we do see him. He went to Wolves, he went to Wraiths, he went to Golems, and now OMG are starting to get in position for this dive. If earlier on Lee Sin had thought this through, he would have been in the area to spot out Maokai and Kha'Zix in the jungle, or to be there himself, just prepared to turn this 2v4 into a 3v4. And so we do see the proper response by OMG going for the dive. They do misplay it a little bit. particularly Janna getting executed here. Takes one too many turret shots. Thresh gets a great play, making sure that they're able to get the final kill. While this could have gone better for OMG, it also could have gone better for LMQ if they had gotten that one hit onto Janna. If Janna had moved off instead of getting executed, the turret might have killed Lucian as well, so there's a little bit of leeway to be given. However, what this does end up causing to happen is that Lulu gets a lot of experience, 2 champions worth, even though she does end up missing the creep wave. So overall, somewhat in favor of LMQ. Now it's up to Kha'Zix and what he can do with these 2 kills. The other option that LMQ could have done with their team instead of the Xerath pick is a Yasuo pick. They had knockups. They had the great synergy with Lee Sin. Lee Sin Yasuo can really pick on Orianna after level 6. They're very strong. And they also had the synergy with Lulu in the top lane, as well as with Thresh in the bottom lane. So if LMQ wanted to fight OMG's team, this would have been a solid pickup. They would have been going into a really strong 5v5 with a pretty strong 5v5 themselves, as well as having a strong skirmish brawl composition. They could have taken Lee Sin, Yasuo into the jungle of OMG from level 6 and into the mid lane and looked to create 2v2 and 3v3 fights to generate a gold lead before the 5v5s happened. One thing to note is that when LMQ went and did Dragon, as they moved Kog'Maw to the bottom, Maokai had just used his TP to go top, so LMQ had a guaranteed 5v4, and that was going to be their Dragon for sure. Kha'Zix went and placed this pink ward in Lee Sin's jungle, and it's a great spot. It's very often it's not checked by junglers. It's a bush that they don't run into, even though it takes an extra third of a second. Most people don't run through it. And this ward is going to be up for a very long time, and it's going to give Kha'Zix so much information. So, let's talk about team compositions. First of all, we'll talk about OMG's, because LMQ's is in response to OMG's composition. OMG's team composition is strong lanes, strong 5v5. There's really no weakness in this team at any point during the game. Maokai deals perfectly well with Lulu. He's strong in lane against her. He's not under any threat of death, while having much stronger gank potential. Kha'Zix and Lee Sin, very strong champions, pretty much on an even power curve as well, with Kha'Zix getting stronger later on, at the very late game. Orianna vs Xerath is another strong farm matchup. Both sides just fairly even. They're going to get their CS. They're not going to be a threat to either one. With Orianna having the kill potential against Xerath, if she can get some really slick plays. She has more damage when she gets close. So, once again, another lane that, while not entirely in OMG's favor, is more like a 55-45. In the bot lane, Lucian, Janna is also extremely strong. They're going to have the potential to beat up on Kog'Maw Thresh, as well as keep them down if they can get it early. As we saw in this game, that didn't quite work out. So now things are just even in that bottom lane. OMG are just safe in every lane. There's strength everywhere. They're not under any true threats. On top of this, this means that they can transition from the laning phase into the team fighting phase very smoothly, and will have an extremely strong 5v5 team fight squad. There's several different strategies they can do with this squad, and I'll talk about that real quick. This kill by Kha'Zix and Maokai up top is facilitated by this ward in Lee Sin's jungle. Kha'Zix was up there ready to perform a counter gank when Lee Sin was near. As soon as he saw Lee Sin leaving towards other lanes, he just waited around for the opportunity. So a couple strategies that OMG can run in their team fight. They have great initiation in Maokai Orianna, get the ball delivery system, group them up, prep them for some solid AoE. Then Kha'Zix is able to move into LMQ's team and provide resets, cleanups with Maokai Kha'Zix up front with the defensiveness of both shields from Janna and Orianna. Lucian is able to move in behind Maokai and provide plenty of solid damage and mobility against LMQ's team. Since LMQ's only real lockup is going to be Thresh, Lucian should be fine fighting in these 5v5 fights. The other option is if OMG are behind, they can play a very defensive protect the ADC death ball composition. If Lee Sin ever tries to go in against OMG's team, Maokai simply has to snare him. Then we get followed up by solid damage onto him and just good protection. There's also plenty of shields to go onto OMG's team to deal with the poke of LMQ. So this is something they could do if they're behind, and then wait till they simply scale up. These are two very strong strategies that OMG can use against LMQ. If OMG are ever able to get a decent enough lead, they'll be able to dive into LMQ's team. We've all seen, or most of us have seen, poke siege comps really fall apart when they get behind, as they can't provide enough damage from their poke to whittle down the other team, and the other team simply will dive into them, be it under turrets, be it in the lane. They'll find a way. And OMG have really strong dive potential. Maokai gets on to eat any target he wants. Then Orianna can follow up with the great shockwave, command dissonance damage. So there's a lot going in OMG's favor. So the win condition is simply surviving the lanes, coming out even. Of course, being ahead would be the benefit, but it would be a good benefit. But if they come out even, that's good as well. They're just going to move into strong 5v5 fights. They should probably start to look to pressure dragons around the second one. If they're not going to pressure the second one, then they should start to pressure the third dragon. At that point, they'll be really strong and they'll have the advantage in the fight, and dragon can force the team fights. They just have to make sure that they don't take too long to start dragon, too long to start turret pushes, or too long to dive. They don't want to let Xerath get his poke damage out. So that's OMG's win condition. Strong lanes, strong team fights at dragon in the mid game, transition into turret pushes. I want to point out that Lulu teleported to this dragon early. I like this. Most of the time you want to keep your top laner at in the top lane to put pressure on the turrets when dragon's coming up. But LMQ are really lacking in disengage. If they want to fight at all for this dragon, they need Lulu there for the slow, for the shields, for the knockup. She can't come in late. She has to be there from the start. And we do see LMQ don't properly play, in my opinion, play this poke composition at this dragon. Instead of Thresh being in this weird position very close to OMG's team, he should have been with his team on the left side. LMQ shouldn't have been in that small area, that little corridor. That's a very dangerous place to be against OMG's team. If Maokai was able to flash in with the snare with Orianna Ball, he could have got all of LMQ in the shockwave. Instead of trying to poke down OMG at the dragon, we see Xerath waiting until dragon's almost dead and trying to snipe it. Would have been much better if LMQ had moved into the river area. Let Xerath and Kog'Maw start to poke while OMG of doing the dragon. Specifically, Xerath using his ult during dragon to get off as much damage with it as possible. So it's a little bit of misplays, and they were being greedy trying to snipe the dragon against a smite when they should have just been trying to get the poke onto OMG's team. After it, we do see LMQ taking the middle turret. Smart move, they had the HP advantage. It's also very smart by OMG and Lucian in particular to realize that LMQ is headed towards the mid turret and that he could take the bottom turret in response. So This whole series of events at Dragon ends up with OMG in the lead. Once again, fits with their win condition, put pressure on Dragon at the second one. So let's talk about LMQ's team composition. Their composition is built a little bit in response to OMG's team. At first, we looked to have a pretty solid brawl composition with Thresh, Lee Sin, and Lulu. But with the pickup of Kha'Zix, Maokai, Lucian, it really solidifies OMG as well as a brawl composition. When we see Janna and Orianna coming out, it's a very strong team fight from OMG. It's quite possible that LMQ wanted to pick up Orianna as well. I think the Orianna pickup instead of the Kog'Maw would have been great, since LMQ already knew who OMG had for their ADC. They didn't need to grab Kog'Maw, and this would have given LMQ huge strength in a great protect the ADC composition, as well as denying a big pick to OMG. So I feel that would have made LMQ's comp better, as well as denying OMG. LMQ may have been assuming that OMG were going to pick up Yasuo, and they were just waiting to see which one they grabbed. It's quite possible that if LMQ had picked up Orianna, OMG pick up Yasuo. So with the composition that LMQ do have, they're running into a very heavy poke siege composition. The unfortunate part is they're lacking in disengage, and this is very deadly against OMG's composition, who want to engage with Maokai, Kha'Zix, Orianna. So there's a big weak point in LMQ's team right there. However, LMQ have the team for the siege poke, and they have to run with it. They don't have a choice. If they try and do 5v5 fights straight up, they're going to lose. They don't have anything for split push. LMQ's only choice is going to be the siege poke composition. Therefore, this makes their win condition get ahead early and start your siege early. LMQ had the right idea in the start of the match. They were doing very well. They took the lead, they played the level 1 better, they played the lane swap better. Unfortunately, Ackerman has gotten picked on, and this Lulu has given up several kills, putting this Kha'Zix into a place where he can essentially carry this game. If Lulu had had better warding, had played a little bit safer, she really didn't have a need to fight against Maokai. She could have played very defensive by staying at her tower, not used Glitter Lance for wave clear, and simply just stayed safe. LMQ already had the advantage in their bot lane. Their mid lane was going to be fine. Lulu should have just essentially played safer, and that's one of the reasons why LMQ are getting a lot of trouble this match, and potentially why they lose. But with the comp that LMQ have, as soon as Kog'Maw picked up his Trinity Force, LMQ should have started moving into a siege composition. They needed to keep up their mid turret for this. Potentially even one of their top or bottom turrets would have been great. And started to move into OMG's side of the map, getting solid wards into the jungle pass to prevent Maokai flanks, and trying their best to get off as much poke with Xerath and Kog'Maw as they could, while doing their very best to prevent OMG from being able to engage upon them. It's very hard. As said before, LMQ are lacking that disengage. If OMG are able to get any snare from Maokai onto LMQ's team composition is going to fall apart. If they can get great wards, if they're very careful about how they damage turrets, about how they get poke off, then LMQ can take the win. They just need to take their time and whittle down OMG. It may even be beneficial if LMQ are sieging up turrets that they don't even bother to attack the turret and just simply look for Kog'Maw and Xerath poke onto OMG's team until LMQ are guaranteed that they're going to win a team fight if an engagement happens. Lulu and Lee Sin while they can't provide disengage, they do have the shields and defensive peel on their team. This is what's going to allow LMQ to win a fight if they have enough HP, simply because when OMG engage, Lulu will help them survive the initial burst damage, and then Lee Sin will be able to, perhaps, say, knock Orianna or Lucian back, and then move in to deal with Maokai Kha'Zix. The biggest threat to LMQ is going to be falling behind. As with all siege poke compositions, falling behind generally means you get destroyed. And that's what we're seeing right now. LMQ have fallen over 5k behind, and this is really a death point for any siege poke composition. If you fall 5k behind the other team this early on, it means you don't have the damage to deal with the defenses that are going to start coming out from the other team. They can simply dive onto you under turrets, and you're going to still lose the fight. It means that the 5v5 team fight is going to have full control over objectives. They can take any dragon they want. They can force you into the Baron pit. There's just not much that you can do with the siege poke composition when you're this far behind. So what can LMQ do right now? They can essentially do what they're trying to do right now. Get the vision in this jungle area. Try and make sure they can see Baron. Hope that Kog'Maw can get strong enough to carry LMQ throughout the game. Xerath is also super strong in the late game, but it's not going to be until 4, 5, 6 items where Xerath and Kog'Maw are going to be able to overcome the tankiness of Maokai. It really takes such a long time for them to reach this point. So OMG are doing the proper response right now. They're having a little bit of a tough time breaking into LMQ's turrets. This is because they don't have a lot of defenses yet. Most of their gold is on Kha'Zix, who is gone almost full damage. What this means for OMG is that their best opportunity is going to be baiting out this Baron. Baiting out the Baron means getting several wards into LMQ's jungle, getting several pinks on Baron so that you can always remove wards that get put in, get pinks in the bush like you see where OMG are backing at, get lots of sweepers and clear out the jungle of LMQ. When LMQ don't have vision, this means that OMG can either start Baron and force LMQ towards the Baron, or they can dive over walls with Maokai Kha'Zix looking to get a pick like the one they almost got onto Lee Sin. So this is one of OMG's best options. This is their way to force fights is around this objective. And that's going to come through vision denial. One thing LMQ should be doing at this point is Kog'Maw should be picking up a scrying orb. When you are this far behind on a team, when you know you're at a loss of vision control and Baron is a threat, especially when your team has 2 solid poke champions, you should be picking up a scrying orb as the ADC. Even not in this situation, scrying orb on the ADC is much stronger in this point than the yellow trinket, the vision ward. I don't know what it's called. Anyways, scrying orb would be great because this would allow LMQ at least one look into the Baron pit to see if they need to go defend it or if OMG are baiting at one of the jungle bushes. The other benefit, as you're seeing right now, to taking control of the Baron side jungle means you know when you can go attack the top turret. Which is really strong against the poke compositions. You want to look for plays made in rotation, and that's what we're seeing OMG do. They are baiting Baron, they are rotating through the top jungle, they are looking to choke LMQ out of vision And if you play this long enough, it will end up working out, particularly because of pink wards. Your pink wards will last forever, whereas the green wards that get placed in the jungle by LMQ will fall off. So if you play this vision game for a solid 3 to 4 minutes, you can almost guarantee that the other team has no wards. Especially this pink ward in the bush down below will let OMG know if LMQ ever go into the river, which means if they keep LMQ from going into the river for 3 minutes, OMG know that they have complete vision control over this entire area. We do see them giving up on it for a quick point, and this is actually very dangerous. Kha'Zix is pushing up the bottom lane, while LMQ had 5 people at Baron. If I was LMQ, I really would have tried to take this Baron. It would have been a little bit of a desperation, but potentially you could have forced it. All the gold, most of the gold rather, is on Kha'Zix with 5 kills. The closest is Orianna with 3, and everyone else on OMG's team is a little bit under par compared to those two. It was LMQ's best opportunity to come back in this game, and they really should have taken it. Sometimes these decisive, crazy calls have come into play. Need to come into play. And that's something I've actually not talked about in the latest videos, but I talk about a lot in the early ones, is if you are a team that is this behind, that you know you're going to lose in the slow play, that you don't have anything to look forward to as the game goes on, you might as well make a crazy play, such as that Baron. If LMQ had tried for that 5v4 Baron, they could have gotten Baron, got some solid gold, turned that Baron into siege potential, ran down OMG's middle, potentially taken the turret, taken 2 turrets, maybe the inhibitor. It's a little of a bit of a long shot, but the worst case scenario for LMQ, if they try that Baron, is they get aced and they lose Baron, right? That would be the worst case scenario. That in the worst case scenario, that means LMQ loses. However, if they don't go for Baron, that also means LMQ loses. You can't sit back idly and let yourself get beat. When the other team is playing a very methodical game, moving into the win, when they're ahead of you and are going to beat you at anything you try, you have to take these crazy opportune plays. Other options would be to completely ignore OMG's team, have all of LMQ rush down the bottom lane. Perhaps you catch OMG off guard, you get the bottom tier 1 turret, OMG try and catch you, you all recall. The other option is maybe OMG now instead decide to base race you, and it's potentially possible that as LMQ you trade mid inhibitor for bottom inhibitor, and this is a much better trade. Now LMQ have a lot of pressure on Baron, and they're able to delay the game a little bit more and hopefully get into the point where Kog'Maw Xerath can outscale completely. But like I said, this is going to take 5 or 6 items. This means 45-50 minutes. This is way down the line, and they cannot be expecting OMG to let this happen. So once again, when you know you're losing, when you're at the point where, if you think about the compositions, that the only way you're going to win is by a massive, massive mistake by the other team, and even then, when you're going to need that massive mistake to happen 2 or 3 times, you might as well make these crazy plays. So that's one point where LMQ could have come back into the game with that opportunity to take Baron. As we've seen, if you watch OMG versus Fnatic in that very long 70-minute match, so almost 80-minute match rather, there's several points where OMG fail at objective control. Fnatic circumvent OMG, sort of like how I was saying if LMQ were to all run bottom, and instead of making the correct decisions, OMG generally make the wrong one. In the case that LMQ rush bottom, OMG might rush Baron. If OMG rush Baron, LMQ can take two turrets, possibly run into the inhibitor if they're fast enough. Whereas the correct play for OMG would be to rush base race the middle. So there's options for LMQ, but they're extremely risky, and they force the other team. They're options that force the other team to make a decision, and you're hoping that they make the wrong one. Otherwise, if you let the other team play their own game, it's much more likely that they're simply going to make right choices, since the game is running at their pace and not yours. So once again, we were talking about vision control throughout Baron earlier, and here's where we see it coming into play. Lee Sin is forced to check without vision, and we get double dashes over the wall to kill Lee Sin. OMG could have potentially taken Baron there with their full team, gone in with the 5v4, but they're still respecting the poke that can come out of Xerath and Kog'Maw. I still do feel that would have been a great opportunity for them to have taken Baron. But whatever, safe play is the more secure play, and OMG don't need to take the risks. So going in from here, I talked a lot about what LMQ could do, what they could have done with the Baron. Pretty much talked about what OMG should be doing with the Baron, what they have been doing with the Baron, and what they should still continue to do with the Baron. It's all about OMG finding a rotational mistake from LMQ and slowly draining them of resources. Eventually, OMG will just reach the point where it doesn't matter, because even without the Baron, OMG are still gaining greater gold than LMQ are over time. Soon, let's say 35, 36 minutes, OMG is just going to be too powerful for LMQ to deal with until LMQ reach that 5 or 6 item mark. I really do like how Janna is moving into Mikhail's Crucible in this situation rather than going for Aegis of the Legion. I don't think Aegis of the Legion is quite necessary for OMG's team. They're not facing really heavy burst damage, they're facing more poke. They're already ahead, so even if they don't have to worry too much about the poke from LMQ because they want to engage. If OMG get themselves in a situation where they're getting poked, it's because OMG are pressuring a turret, and more than likely than not, they're going to dive in and really reduce the amount of AP damage that's coming out of Xerath and Lulu in this situation. Moving into the Mikhail's Crucible is pretty essential. Thresh hooks onto Lucian can be devastating, and would be one way for LMQ to come back into this game. If they could get a hook onto Lucian, Xerath and Lulu with Kog'Maw should be able to burst him down before the hook ends, and now it's all of a sudden a 5v4 without the sustained damage of the ADC on OMG's side. So this is a good pickup by them. I do like how it looks like Thresh is moving into the locket. This would be the better option for him instead of Mikhail's. Mikhail's isn't really going to stop OMG's initiation. If Maokai gets the snare, Orianna ult is going to follow real quick, regardless of whether or not Mikhail's gets used. So the locket provides good strength against the strong damage of Orianna and the AoE magic damage of Maokai. So as we keep moving, it's just more of the same in this situation. It's by the numbers. If you've been paying attention to the gold lead, you've seen it continue to grow for OMG over time. Last time I was talking about the gold lead, they only had a 10,000 gold lead, and now it's closer to a 13,000 gold lead. They've gotten a second dragon, they've gotten more CS, they've gotten an extra turret, and so now it's entirely possible. Now it's even more possible for OMG to put threat on this Baron. And as we see, Xerath uses his ultimate just for vision. This is another reason why Kog'Maw should have a scrying orb. LMQ need a way to see this. They need a way to check Baron without losing complete control of their jungle. And OMG keep returning to this, and that's all they need to do. Back and forth in the jungle. They're so much stronger, and they have all the vision. Eventually, they just get a little tired of it, to be honest. This is very dangerous play. Lee Sin and Kha'Zix are both very strong at taking this Baron. So I wouldn't recommend doing what OMG just did. Like I said, they had complete vision control over the jungle. They should have been looking for a pick. They should have just kept baiting back and forth. As soon as they saw that ward, kill it with the pink you have, then back up. When LMQ back off, do it again. Just keep back and forth until you take complete vision control, because LMQ are going to run out of wards. But OMG get a little impatient, and they go for the 50-50 Baron. If LMQ had timed it right, they could have planned to use Kog'Maw's ultimate with Xerath's W and Q onto Lee Sin's execute smite. Potentially could have taken Baron right there. The flip side of this matter is, by running this 50-50 Baron, it forces LMQ to fight. They have to sacrifice somebody, and if they sacrifice Lee Sin, even though they get the Baron, this now means there's a 5v4 for OMG, and they're very ahead. So even losing that Baron to a 50-50 smite wouldn't have been the worst situation, and they could have potentially still turned that into the win as well. So while it is a bit of impatient play and unnecessary, it does get the job done. Just be careful when you do it. If you're going to go for this scary Baron play, make sure you have this ginormous power lead. So that's the game. I think if you want to take things away, go back to the pick and ban phase. There was a couple ways that LMQ could have played this pick and ban phase differently. Stated before, second ban Alistar instead of this Rise. That way you know that Rumble ban is coming. Now you have the Rise versus Maokai battle up top instead of Lulu. You can get a much stronger champion than Lulu up there. They also could have picked this Orianna up earlier. Would have really denied OMG's team style, forced them into sort of a Yasuo pickup, which still would have been strong for OMG, but Orianna does very well against Yasuo. So this would have also gone in LMQ's favor. So, just a little bit of mismatch in the team compositions is what really came to play in this game. You got a poke siege team that has no real disengage and makes them very vulnerable. And against this really strong 5v5 fighting team, they just essentially got shut down. The moment OMG was ahead, they can take complete control of the game. So that's another thing to take away from this game, is how OMG shut down LMQ once they got the lead. And they did it very methodically. Lots of objective control. They took Dragon every time. They always had vision around Baron. They did a lot of vision denial. They forced LMQ to spend a lot of time in their jungle, which let one or two people of OMG's team go to the lanes and pick up farm. And they slowly continued to grow a gold lead over LMQ until it reached the point where that gold lead was unstoppable. So that's the game. I hope it was informative. I hope you learned something. If not, I hope it was at least entertaining. Once again, the notes for this match can be found below, as well as the link to my portal page for all of my 2014 League of Legends World Championship video analysis and notes. I'm Keith, aka LoLByTheNumbers, and thank you for watching.